Hello everyone. This is Six Path Weeb, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we continue our fanfiction journey with What If Naruko Left the Shinobi World for Ophis? Part 2. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is created for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage, images, music, or other copyrighted material that may appear in this video. All rights belong to their respective creators, studios, and copyright holders. After the events of Part 1, Naruko's path has taken a direction no one in the Shinobi world could have predicted. With new powers, new allies, and a destiny that reaches far beyond the hidden villages, the story is about to become even more intense. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the next chapter of this epic what-if adventure. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin. With barely any effort showing on his face, Red gently brushed aside the enormous wind-shaped spinning disk as though it were a drifting leaf. To his surprise, however, the breeze carried far more strength than he had expected, and a few of the shining scales on the back of his paw sparkled brightly from the impact. Naruko wasted no time and called out, "Fire style, fire dragon flame stream." Taking a deep breath, she released a magnificent ribbon of golden-orange flames that twisted through the air like a dancing dragon. The stream was nearly as large as one of Red's great limbs and filled the sky with warm, glowing light. Because of his size, Red could do little more than stand his ground and admire the display. The flames swirled around him harmlessly, painting his scales in shades of amber and gold. When Naruko finally stopped, the brilliant light faded, revealing Red standing proudly beneath a shower of glowing sparks. The true dragon gave an appreciative nod. "That was quite impressive," he said. Red answered with a display of his own. Opening his jaws, he released a stream of crimson fire that curled through the sky like a flowing ribbon. Naruko had already leapt high into the air, using her agility to soar above the colorful flames before they reached her. Wind style, mountain blessing. A powerful but gentle current swept across the field. Rather than pushing Red around, it lifted leaves, petals, and glittering motes of light into the sky. The dragon laughed as the swirling wind wrapped around him. As Naruko's jump reached its peak, she formed two glowing spheres of chakra in her hands and lightly tapped the top of Red's head with them. The spheres burst into sparkling lights that drifted around the dragon like tiny stars. A cloud of shimmering dust rose around them. When it cleared, Naruko stood grinning while Red let out a cheerful rumble. "I can see that my size may not be ideal for this challenge," Red said thoughtfully. Naruko raised an eyebrow as the air around her seemed to ripple. The colorful orbs floating nearby suddenly shone brighter than before. Thanks to her training and keen senses, she immediately realized that Red was using a clever illusion. She blinked once. The world settled back into focus, and she gasped. Red had become much smaller. Instead of towering above her, he now stood only a little taller than she was. "That's a neat trick," Naruko said with a smile. Red chuckled. "The illusion was only a distraction while I adjusted my size. It is much easier to compete fairly this way." Naruko nodded. "Then let's continue." The two dashed forward. What followed was less a battle and more a friendly contest of skill. Naruko discovered that Red was surprisingly graceful. He used his wings to create playful diversions, his tail to balance, and his quick movements to keep pace with her. Naruko adapted just as quickly. Her training had taught her how to face all kinds of unusual situations, and she enjoyed learning from Red's unique style. After a while, they separated. Red released a stream of colorful flames shaped like floating lanterns. Naruko answered with a great wave of sparkling water. When the two techniques met, a shining mist spread across the area, filling the air with tiny rainbows. Neither participant seemed bothered by the reduced visibility. Red used the mist to create another illusion. For a brief moment, Naruko found herself surrounded by dozens of friendly dragons made entirely of light. She laughed as she recognized the trick and gently dispelled it. "You're getting better at those," she called. And you're getting better at spotting them, Red replied. The challenge continued across the field. Naruko raced through the air on currents of wind while Red glided gracefully overhead. They exchanged dazzling techniques that filled the sky with colors, lights, and swirling patterns. At one point, Red created a spiral of crimson fire that transformed into glowing butterflies. Naruko answered by shaping streams of wind into spinning petals that danced among them. The spectators watching from afar could hardly tell whether they were witnessing a contest or a celebration. Eventually, both Naruko and Red landed on a grassy hill overlooking the sparkling field. They were tired but smiling. Naruko sat down and looked at the dragon. That was fun. Red nodded warmly. It has been a long time since I met someone who could challenge me in such a creative way. The evening sky glowed with shades of gold and violet as they watched the last of their magical creations drift across the horizon. Though neither had won nor lost, both felt they had gained something far more valuable, a new friendship and a deeper respect for one another. Much to the surprise of both Red and Ophis, Naruko suddenly began to laugh. She slowly stood up and brushed the dust from her clothes, a bright grin on her face. Her cloak was a little torn from all the excitement, but she looked as cheerful as ever. How are you still full of energy? Red asked in amazement. We've been testing our strength for hours, and you still look ready for another round. Naruko chuckled. My family has always been known for incredible endurance. I've also learned a lot from my friends over the years. Every adventure taught me something new. Red shook his enormous head and smiled. Well, I have to admit, I'm getting tired. One last challenge? Sounds good to me, Naruko replied. Deep down, Red had enjoyed every moment. It had been a very long time since he had met someone who challenged him in such a fun and exciting way. Their contest was not about winning or losing. It was about testing themselves, learning, and growing stronger. Nearby, Ophis watched quietly. She had seen many remarkable events during her long life, but this one felt different. Neither Naruko nor Red relied on flashy displays or grand tricks. Instead, they relied on determination, creativity, and trust in their own abilities. Ophis already knew something important. No matter what happened next, both of them had learned valuable lessons from one another. Ready? Naruko asked. Red nodded. Naruko raised her hands. In one palm, a swirling breeze spun like a tiny whirlwind. In the other, a warm golden glow danced like sunlight. She remembered all the time she had worked together with her friends to create amazing techniques. Those memories filled her with confidence. Across from her, Red gathered his own energy. Bright crimson light sparkled around him like a sunrise. With a smile, Naruko combined the two swirling forces into a shining star-shaped creation. Here we go. Red released his brilliant beam of light at the same moment. The two techniques raced toward each other. Instead of crashing violently, they twirled together in the air like dancers. The colorful light spiraled upward and burst into a magnificent display that painted the sky with glowing colors. For a moment, everyone simply stared. It's beautiful, Ophis said softly. Red laughed and sat down on the ground. I think that settles it. That was wonderful. Naruko smiled. It really was. As the colors faded, Naruko and Ophis began walking back toward Naruko's home. You still haven't told me why you're following me, Naruko said playfully. Ophis folded her arms. You are interesting. I want to learn more about you. Naruko could tell there was more to the answer, but she decided not to press the matter. As they walked, Naruko found herself thinking about all the friends she had met during her travels. Every journey had given her stories worth remembering. Maybe she should write them down someday. That's not a bad idea, she said aloud. What isn't? Ophis asked. Writing stories, Naruko replied. I've had enough adventures to fill several books. When they arrived home, Naruko unlocked the door and welcomed Ophis inside. A moment later, she noticed another visitor nearby. You can come in too, Rias, Naruko called. Ria stepped inside with a friendly smile. The three of them made their way to the kitchen, where a large marble table stood in the center of the room. "Would anyone like something to drink?" Naruko asked. "Water, please," said Ophis. "Tea would be lovely," said Rias. Naruko happily prepared their drinks and poured herself a glass of fruit juice. The three sat together around the table. "I think we all have questions," Rias said. Naruko laughed and nodded. "You're probably wondering who I am, where I came from, and how I learned all these strange abilities." Both guests nodded eagerly. Naruko took a sip of juice and smiled. "Well," she said, settling into her chair, "it's a very long story. So get comfortable." By the end of the evening, Naruko had shared the story of her life and the long journey that eventually helped bring peace to her world. She skipped over many smaller adventures, not because they were unimportant, but because she wanted to keep the tale simple and easy to follow. Even with the shortened version, it took nearly 2 hours to tell. Afterward, she spent some time answering questions about chakra, ninja ranks, special abilities, and other fascinating parts of her world. Rias listened carefully before speaking. "So, if I understand correctly, you're a ninja and a sage from another world. You helped bring people together after many years of conflict, and you've been part of some truly incredible events. Is that about right?" Naruko smiled and rubbed the back of her head. "More or less. A lot of people helped along the way, though." Rias nodded thoughtfully. "Would you consider joining my peerage?" Before giving an answer, Naruko tilted her head. "Can I ask something first?" "Of course," Rias replied. Naruko thought for a moment. "When you met that boy earlier, why didn't you step in right away? It seemed like you wanted to help him." Rias sighed softly. "I did want to help. Sometimes, though, there are rules and traditions that make things more complicated than they should be. Looking back, I wish I could have handled things differently." Naruko nodded. She understood that people sometimes had difficult choices to make. After a while, their conversation shifted to the mysterious evil pieces. Naruko found them fascinating because they reminded her of the complex seals she had studied in her own world. "So," Rias asked again, "have you decided whether you'll join my peerage?" Before Naruko could answer, Ophis spoke up from her seat. "That might be difficult." Rias turned toward her. "And who are you, exactly? I can barely sense anything about you." Naruko was curious as well. Ophis had shared very little about herself. Ophis folded her hands neatly. "My name is Ophis." She paused for a moment. "Some know me as the Infinite Dragon." Rias blinked in surprise. Naruko simply nodded. "That's a pretty impressive title." Titles had never meant much to Naruko. What mattered to her was who a person truly was. Rias, however, knew enough stories to understand that Ophis was someone extraordinary. The realization made her look at both Ophis and Naruko with newfound respect. As the night grew later, Naruko stretched and yawned. "It's getting pretty late. Ophis is staying here tonight. What about you, Rias?" Rias smiled. "If it's all right, I'd like to stay too." "Of course," Naruko replied cheerfully. "The bedrooms are upstairs, and you're welcome to make yourselves comfortable." With that, Naruko headed toward the staircase. Rias and Ophis remained behind for a moment. "I have to admit," Rias said with a small laugh, "you weren't quite what I expected." "People rarely are," Ophis answered calmly. The two shared a quiet smile before following Naruko upstairs. It had been a long day filled with surprising discoveries, new friendships, and remarkable stories. As everyone settled in for the night, the house grew peaceful and still, ready to welcome whatever adventures tomorrow might bring. "What is going on with this world?" wondered Naruko Uzumaki as she sat quietly beneath the shade of a large tree. The world's energy felt unusual to her. It was not harmful, but it seemed as though many different kinds of energy were trying to work together without quite knowing how. It reminded her of a choir that had not yet learned to sing in harmony. Naruko had not yet spent much time studying the natural energy of this world. It was very different from the energy she knew, so she wanted to be careful and learn more before trying anything complicated. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her senses. Deep beneath the ground, she felt traces of ancient power mixed with bright, sparkling energy. There were also places where the flow felt tangled, as if old stories and forgotten memories had become woven into the land itself. The discovery filled her with curiosity. This world must have a very long history, she thought. I wonder what kinds of people lived here before us. Maybe they left behind lessons that everyone can still learn from today. Naruko smiled to herself. Every world had its own mysteries, and she had always loved solving puzzles. Is something wrong, senpai? Asked the polite and cheerful knight, Yudo Kiba. Naruko blinked and returned her attention to the present. Meanwhile, inside the Occult Research Club building at Kuo Academy, Rias Gremory sighed softly. Earlier that morning, she had spent time speaking with Naruko and Ophis. Their conversation had been lively, especially because Ophis had a habit of making unexpected comments that often left Rias unsure how to respond. Naruko, meanwhile, had found the whole situation rather amusing. Kiba noticed Rias's thoughtful expression. Nothing is wrong, Rias replied. Could you please bring Issei here? There is something important we need to discuss. Of course, senpai, Kiba said with a smile. A few minutes later, Issei Hyaudu hurried into the room. He had just learned surprising news about his new circumstances, and he was trying very hard to understand everything at once. Rias remained patient while Akeno smiled warmly. Kiba stood nearby, ready to help explain things, while Koneko quietly enjoyed a slice of cake. Before the conversation could continue, a cheerful voice came from the open window. Wow, everyone looks very serious today. The group turned to see Naruko sitting comfortably on the windowsill. Naruko? Rias said. What brings you here? Several members of the club looked surprised. Rias did not often speak so casually with people she had only recently met. I had a few questions, Naruko replied. And I was curious about how things were going. Issei pointed at her. Wait, who are you? Naruko grinned. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. The simple introduction immediately eased the atmosphere. Rias gestured toward an empty seat. Would you like to stay for a while? I was about to explain a few things. Sure, Naruko said. She listened carefully as Rias described the world of devils, angels, and sacred gears. Several parts of the explanation reminded Naruko of stories from her own homeland. Different worlds often had surprising similarities, even when they seemed completely different at first glance. What interested her most was the sacred gear that Issei possessed. According to Rias, it was a remarkable artifact with unique abilities and great potential. Naruko leaned forward thoughtfully. That sounds fascinating, she said. Back where I come from, there were legendary treasures too. Every special item had a story behind it. I wonder what story this sacred gear has. Issei looked down at the mysterious power he carried. I never really thought about it that way. Then maybe that's where you should start, Naruko said with an encouraging smile. The best adventures often begin with a question. The room grew quiet for a moment. Then everyone began discussing possibilities, exchanging ideas and theories about ancient artifacts, hidden histories, and the many mysteries waiting to be discovered. For Naruko, it felt like the beginning of a brand new adventure. Naruko understood that the sacred gears were remarkable tools. Issei's sacred gear seemed to carry the spirit and strength of a dragon, creatures that were admired in her world for their wisdom and incredible power. Even so, everything she had heard felt almost too amazing to accept without question. She wanted to learn more about them herself. There had to be more to these mysterious sacred gears than she currently knew. For now, the best way to improve your standing in the devil world is to help with our community service activities and assist the people who request our support, Rias explained. Kiba can show you how everything works. The kid has potential, Naruko said as she looked out across the grounds of Kuo Academy with curiosity. Especially if what you said about that sacred gear is true. Ara, would you like some tea, Naruko-san? Asked the cheerful brunette. That would be wonderful, thank you, Naruko replied with a warm smile. She was not the type to spend all her time thinking about appearances, but she appreciated how kind and confident the people around her seemed. Akeno carried herself with grace, and her friendly attitude made everyone feel welcome. A moment later, Ria stepped beside the window where Naruko was sitting. Together, they looked out at the academy grounds. So, did I answer any of your questions? Rias asked. She had been taking the opportunity to learn more about her fellow redhead as well. Even if Naruko could not officially join her peerage, Rias believed she could become a valuable friend and ally. Naruko had a relaxed personality, but she also showed great enthusiasm for the things she loved. Earlier that morning, she had been especially delighted by a bowl of ramen. More importantly, she clearly cared deeply for the people around her and was always willing to help those she considered important. Rias found herself interested in getting to know her better. Before Naruko could answer, Akeno returned carrying a tray of freshly prepared tea. The two redheads sat across from one another at a table decorated with a chessboard. Naruko took a sip and smiled. This tea is really delicious. She said, realizing she had not yet learned the girl's name. Akeno Himejima, Naruko-san, Akeno replied with a polite bow. I am President Rias's queen. Naruko smiled. My name is Naruko Uzumaki. It's nice to meet you, Akeno-chan. And thank you for the wonderful tea. Although she had grown up in unusual circumstances, many of her mentors had taught her the importance of kindness and good manners. She always tried to show gratitude when someone did something thoughtful. Turning back to Rias, she said calmly, not all of my questions, but you answered a few of the simpler ones. Rias sighed softly. If your other questions are anything like the ones you asked last night, you may need to speak with my brother or even my parents to find those answers. Naruko nodded. That's what I expected. Then why don't I introduce you to the rest of my peerage? Rias suggested with a smile. Naruko returned the smile and nodded. Well, you've already met my queen, Akeno, and my pawn, Issei. The blonde student who left with him is my knight, Yudo Kiba. And sitting right beside you is my rook, Koneko Tojo. Hello, Koneko said quietly. Naruko turned toward her and offered a friendly grin. It's nice to meet you too, Koneko-chan. Koneko blinked in surprise for a moment before giving a small nod. The room settled into a comfortable silence. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the clubroom and giving it a peaceful atmosphere. Naruko sipped her tea and looked around at the group. They were all very different from one another, yet they worked together like a family. For the first time since arriving in this unfamiliar world, Naruko felt a little more at home. There were still many mysteries waiting to be solved, but she was beginning to believe that she had found new friends who would help her along the way. What is it with this place and these quiet children? Naruko wondered with a thoughtful expression. Is that their specialty or something? But Ria seemed to be hiding something. There was something, or someone, nearby who appeared to be connected to her in much the same way as the rest of her friends. Why is she keeping it a secret? Naruko wondered. Being close to the group, Naruko could sense that they all shared a special connection. She couldn't tell exactly how it worked, but it felt as though their energies were gently linked together. If I had a way to see those connections more clearly, I might understand it better, she thought. For now, all she could do was feel that the bond existed. Still, if Rias was keeping it private, she probably had a good reason. And why would she tell me? I'm still new to all of them. So, Koneko, Naruko said curiously, do you know about Senjutsu? As a sage, Naruko was especially aware of the natural energy flowing through the world. From what she could sense, Koneko seemed unusually in tune with it. Oddly enough, it didn't seem like Koneko had learned how to use that energy yet. Perhaps she had never been taught about it. How do you know about Shinjutsu? Koneko asked in surprise. Naruko smiled warmly and looked at the silver-haired girl. Then she gently gathered some of the natural energy that drifted through the nearby trees. The others watched with amazement as a soft glow surrounded her. Her bright blue eyes shimmered and took on a gentle crimson hue. Delicate markings appeared on her cheeks, and she seemed more connected to the world around her than ever before. When she spoke, her voice was calm and cheerful. Because I'm a sage, little kitty. Koneko blinked in surprise, while the others exchanged curious glances. Far away, atop a tall building, a black-haired woman with cat ears and a matching tail suddenly paused. She felt a familiar wave of natural energy drift across the city. Shinjutsu? She murmured. Who could be using so much natural energy? She gazed toward the horizon with interest, wondering who the mysterious sage might be. Rias was just as shocked by this revelation as Koneko and Akeno were. Naruko had mentioned that she was a sage, but she had never explained why. Rias had assumed it was more of a title than something with deeper meaning. Sage, but... How? A still shell-shocked Koneko asked. It kind of runs in my family. My clan's ancestor was called the Rikadu Sennin, and my godfather was the one who first introduced the technique to me. I was able to master it to such a degree that people started calling me the Nidaime Rikadu Sennin. Koneko muttered, her white hair covering her eyes. Rias and Akeno looked at the girl with curiosity and concern, wondering why she had suddenly gone so quiet. While Koneko was usually rather monotone, she was hardly ever silent. If anything, she was often very open about her thoughts on people and situations. Seeing her this quiet was unusual. Could you say that one more time, kitten? Naruko asked as she released her hold on nature chakra, returning to the sapphire-eyed teen she normally appeared to be. Can you teach me? Koneko asked again, only slightly louder than before. Naruko shrugged as she picked up her cup once more. I don't see why not. It is a pretty useful skill to know, and it would be a shame not to share it. What Koneko did next surprised everyone present. She wrapped her arms around Naruko as tightly as she could, burying her face in the girl's black shirt while quietly repeating small words of thanks. Naruko's eyes softened as she returned the hug, realizing why this meant so much to her. She did not know every detail, but she could guess that Shinjutsu, or perhaps someone connected to it, had left Koneko with fears she had carried for a long time. Because of that, Koneko had become afraid of using an ability that was naturally part of who she was. Naruko's heart went out to her. She understood how difficult it could be to feel uncertain about something that had always been a part of you. Learning to accept yourself was never easy, but it was an important step toward finding peace and confidence. Koneko, meanwhile, felt a wave of emotions she could barely put into words. She had been young when everything happened, but she knew her sister better than anyone. Deep down, she believed there was more to the story than what people often said. Even so, the memories had left her worried about what Shinjutsu might bring. Watching Naruko use it so naturally, while remaining calm, kind, and in complete control, gave her hope. It showed her that the skill itself was not something to fear. If Naruko could teach her to understand it the same way, then perhaps she would no longer have to worry about all the what-if questions that had followed her for so long. Rias and Akeno watched with small smiles. They both understood why this meant so much to Koneko, and they were happy that she had finally found something that brought her comfort and confidence. There were still challenges ahead, including the situation involving her sister, but that did not mean Koneko could not enjoy the happiness and encouragement Naruko had brought into her life. You just keep getting more and more interesting, don't you, Naruko? Rias thought. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you for your support. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.